White is the absence of color. In contrast, black is the absence of light. All mediums deal with similar absolutes. In music, silence is the absence of sound, and in graphic design, negative space is the empty space that surrounds a subject. Batman logos are iconic because of how negative space draws you to the subject of the logo, the bat. Adam West's campy take on Batman has an equally cartoonish logo. The bubbly edges match the bouncy theme song, the over-the-top acting, and bright color palette. In film and TV, every choice a director makes shapes a character. Costume and set design, score, pacing, dialogue, every facet in the medium is at the director's disposal.
Batman speaking.
Look at the choices made in this scene even. Here, Adam West is holding a bright red, bat-shaped phone. The scene is brightly lit. It's not meant to be taken seriously. Watch as he readjusts and the two actors crowd around the phone impractically. Adam West is playing this scene for laughs. You can hear it in the dialogue even.
The Riddler.
What the heck's he trying to tell us?
I don't know.
This is a moment where hero and sidekick confront villain, and yet the scene is completely absent of tension. For comparison, here's a confrontation between the 2022 Batman and Riddler. The lighting and staging draw us to the actors' faces. This Batman is equally as confused as the previous one, but Pattinson plays his scene for emotion. The audience can palpably feel his fear boil over into a frustration. The quivering music and dim lighting and tense pacing work as a negative space that outlines Pattinson's performance.
What have you done? What have you done? What have you done?
In essence, director Matt Reeves is the barrier between negative and positive space. He sets the jagged edges that define Pattinson's role and keep the actor from coloring outside the lines. Put another way, characterization is a house with many rooms. Like an interior designer moonlighting at a nightclub, Matt Reeves meticulously inspects every item that furnishes his rooms. Listen to how his team talks about Pattinson's makeup.
That really made a big link with the drifter person, which is who he becomes when he takes his cowl off. I liked the idea that he had the remains of his Batman makeup on, and it looked very rock and roll.
Comparatively, Tim Burton is not as thorough. Here, Burton uses makeup to blend Batman's mask and face. Later in the scene, however, Batman's going to reveal his face, and Burton doesn't want him wearing makeup. As we cut back to his face, the makeup is gone. For moviegoers, this continuity error is as jarring as if, in the middle of a house tour, an interior designer was rearranging furniture. In literature, there's a distinction between direct and indirect characterization. Just as positive space is the subject of interest, direct characterization is an explicit statement about who a character is. If, for instance, you wanted to tell an audience your character is angry, you might have them explicitly state,
I'm vengeance.
Indirect characterization, on the other hand, is less forthcoming. Robert Pattinson's makeup, for example, is subtly defining the character. The makeup is a quiet marker of how the Batman's world is bleeding into Bruce Wayne's world. Eyeshadow is never the point of interest on an actor's face. Instead, it draws attention to the actor's eyes. In a similar way, Reeves outfits his world with shadows.
They think I'm hiding in the shadows.
These shadows fill alleyways like Pattinson's eyeshadow fills his pores. And while the shadows are not the main subject, they fill a negative space that adds texture and dimension to Batman's story. Reeves also cloaks his sound design in negative space as well. As Batman walks towards the criminals, each step is accompanied by a thump of silence. This is amplified by a plodding orchestral score that luxuriates in the empty space that silence creates. As Batman might approach his utility belt, Reeves asks the Batman theme song to do different things at different times.
This street chase is some of the best action filmmaking I have seen. Meanwhile, the music that Giacchino uses here interrupts his main Batman theme with rapid percussive breaks. So that we only hear the charging theme when the Batmobile gains on the Penguin. Also, they thump into barrels, which syncs perfectly with the percussion.
Reeves adapts music to fit the mood and tone of his story, and like a Batarang or the Batmobile, mood and tone become an extension of Batman's character. It's a good idea to look at Batman's counterpart here. At the climax of the movie, Riddler doesn't run away. Whereas the Penguin engaged Batman in a high-speed chase, the Riddler allows himself to be arrested. Riddler so trusts his intellect that he believes his plan will continue to evade Batman even if he physically can't. To zoom out, Matt Reeves has a similar trust in his own plan. Though at the climax, his movie is at peak tension, Reeves interrupts this momentum to place Riddler in a quiet diner. It's fitting that this scene alludes to Edward Hopper's painting. In Nighthawks, the negative space surrounding the diner draws you to the restaurant's patrons, the fluorescent lighting illuminating their loneliness, and the dark backdrop behind them framing it. This scene serves a similar function, the setting an empathetic observer keenly aware of the Riddler's loneliness.
In these sketches for Nighthawks, we can see Hopper out on the street looking for the right back angle for this man, modifying to find the perfect effect. Here's his sketches of Josephine, his wife, who modeled for the woman in the painting. Here's her right hand holding a cigarette, which he eventually transplanted to her partner.
In the same way, we see Reeves tailoring his pacing and setting to fit his character, outfitting a world congruent with their personalities. This world building is so uniquely tailored for this Batman that if you were to drop another Batman into this world, the story would fall apart.
I'll kill you all.
To close the metaphor, Robert Pattinson is only an actor. He did not build Gotham. That work was reserved for the movie's director. Pattinson is merely responsible for the space that Batman occupies. Human beings as primary actors in our own lives do not always get to decide the pacing of our lives or the world that we live in. But the negative space that surrounds us is just as responsible for shaping our character as the decisions that we make within our own person. Therein, we will never be fully self-aware until we step outside of ourselves and study the space around us. Only then can we understand the people we are becoming.